In a glittering hotel where luxury masks lethal games, 5 shadows descend to claim a Korean mafia boss's throne, until a Jamaican waitress's concealed fury turns the tide, rewriting fate in blood and broken glass. In a city where shadows hide empires and every smile conceals a blade, the most lethal threats are the ones disguised as everyday faces. The Azure Table wasn't just a restaurant, it was a gilded battlefield, cloaked in luxury. Diplomats sealed deals over aged scotch. Celebrities buried secrets in caviar courses. And men like Kyung-soo Lee came to orchestrate their kingdoms under the veil of civility. He lounged beneath crystal chandeliers that dripped light like liquid gold, his tailored suit hugging a frame honed by years of survival, tattoos peeking from his collar like whispers of his Korean underworld roots. To the headlines that praised his business acumen, he was the mogul who'd turned illicit trades into legitimate fortunes. To those who knew his true name, he was the dragon of Seoul's back alleys, a man who'd clawed his way from blood-soaked streets to command fear itself. Tonight, he was trying to savor a moment of fragile peace amid the clink of fine china and the hum of discreet power plays. Welcome back, my fierce dreamers and story warriors. Before we dive deeper, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment where you're tuning in from. It lights up my soul to see our global tribe growing. Every share, every word of encouragement keeps these tales alive and kicking. So grab your favorite spot, breathe deep, and let me pull you into a world where hidden skills rewrite destinies. Tashana Reed glided through the room like a storm held in check. She didn't flutter with the forced charm of the other servers, all eager nods and vanishing acts. Her movements carried the quiet rhythm of Jamaica's resilient shores, steady, watchful, with hands that poured drinks as precisely as if calibrating a weapon. Kyung-soo noticed, though he told himself it was nothing, but there was an edge to her vigilance. Not the rote scan of a waitress tallying orders, but the sharp assessment of a survivor mapping escape routes, gauging distances, spotting shadows that lingered too long. Her posture screamed readiness, not service, as if her body remembered battles the rest of the world had forgotten. Except tonight, those battles were real. At 9:16 p.m., the first bullet tore through the air like thunder ripping silk. By 9:17, the Azure Table had transformed into a deadly arena, where elegance shattered into survival, and the only hope for escape was a woman no one had truly seen. But to grasp how a Jamaican waitress became the shield between a mafia boss and oblivion, you must know that Tashana Reed wasn't shaped in the glow of hotel lights. She was forged in the fire of forgotten wars, in Black Ops shadows where governments dispatched ghosts to handle the unhandleable. And Kyung-soo Lee, who'd spent decades convinced his power made him invincible, was about to learn otherwise from 5 men armed with grudges as old as his empire. Welcome back, my fierce dreamers and story warriors. Before we dive in, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and comment. Where you're tuning in from, it lights up my soul to see our global tribe growing. Every share, every word of encouragement keeps these tales alive and kicking. So grab your favorite spot, breathe deep, and let me pull you into a world where hidden skills rewrite destinies. The window didn't break, it exploded. One instant, the Azure Table pulsed with the symphony of wealth and whispered intrigue. The next, it erupted into fangs of glass and fury wrapped in gunfire. Tashana's instincts ignited before her mind could catch up. The acrid tang of cordite flooded her senses sharp, familiar, like an old scar itching. Her knees flexed, balance shifting low as pandemonium unfurled like a venomous bloom. 5 men in black tactical gear stormed through the breach, weapons leveled with the cold assurance of killers who'd reaped lives before and planned to again. They advanced with drilled precision, and every buried reflex in Tashana roared to the surface. But these weren't random thugs crashing a dinner. The man they targeted wasn't flinching. Kyung-soo Lee flowed like shadowed lightning. The lead assailant lunged, and Kyung-soo's arm snapped out quicker than his polished exterior suggested, seizing the man's wrist and wrenching it with savage force. Bones snapped like dry twigs. The gun skittered across the marble. Kyung-soo slammed his fist into the attacker's gut, then his palm into the throat, dropping him in a heap of blood and tactical fabric. 2 more flanked him from the sides. Kyung-soo pivoted right, dodging the first's grasp and clamping onto the second's arm, twisting it into submission with the expertise of someone who'd ended empires, not just evenings. The man's eyes bulged. Kyung-soo released him to crumple, then unleashed a spinning kick that cracked into the first attacker's jaw with bone-shattering impact. This wasn't a tycoon scrambling for safety, this was the dragon of Seoul's syndicates, and he'd never truly sheathed his claws. But the last 2 had cornered him, barrels aimed at his core, methodical, unyielding, poised for the execution. Tashana surged. She snatched the silver tray she'd been carrying and flung it like a lethal frisbee. It slammed into the left gunman's neck, staggering him. Then she closed in, fluid and fierce, grabbing a steak knife from a nearby table. She didn't hurl it, she wielded it, slashing the jagged edge across the flanking operative's gun arm. He howled. The weapon clattered. She hooked his ankle, sending him crashing into a chair that splintered under the force. The final man pivoted his rifle toward her. Kyung-soo was already there, yanking the barrel skyward as it barked into the ceiling. Chunks of plaster cascaded like rain. Kyung-soo drove his shoulder into the man's chest, then wrenched the gun free and swung it like a battering ram, cracking it against the skull with decisive finality. Silence crashed down like a wave. 5 men lay sprawled in ruin across the floor. Kyung-soo stood amid the debris, breath ragged, suit ripped at the sleeve, a rivulet of blood tracing his temple. He looked like a storm god clad in silk, and Tashana froze. Realizing she hadn't rescued him alone, they danced in tandem, their eyes locked across the chaos. His gaze burned dark and probing, laced with something primal, not just thanks, something deeper, more perilous. "You move like a ghost in the fight," he said, voice gravelly from the rush. "But you held back on that last one, left him for me." "I didn't," Tashana countered, but she paused. She had hesitated. Just a heartbeat, her instincts registering him as a fellow predator, not prey in need. Kyung-soo stepped over the bodies like discarded obstacles, closing in with deliberate intensity. Blood flecked his knuckles, his presence radiating heat. He looked commanding and untamed. "Who are you?" A demand, not a query. Tashana's pulse thrummed. Someone who should have stayed in the background. Too late. He was near now, close enough for her to catch his scent, sandalwood mixed with sweat and the metallic edge of battle. "You fight like a warrior, serve tables like a shadow, but you're in my hotel, my territory." "Your hotel?" "I control this place, the whole floor." His eyes held hers, unblinking. "Which means you just dismantled threats in my domain without asking." The space between them crackled with unspoken energy. Tashana should bolt, vanish into the rainy night outside, but something anchored her the way he saw through her, like peering into a mirror of shared scars. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. "Authorities are coming," she murmured. "You need a cover." "I have one." Ambush thwarted. Self-defense. Kyung-soo tilted his head. "But you won't stick around for questions, will you? People like you fade into the mist." He knew. Somehow, he sensed it. Tashana edged back. Kyung-soo mirrored her forward. "Stay," he commanded, the tone of a man who bent worlds to his will. "I don't follow commands." Then heed a warning. "The Reyes cartel sent these 5. They've seen you now, your skills. That makes you a target or an asset." His stare sharpened. "I'm offering alliance. I survive alone. Everyone craves more." He lifted his hand slowly, brushing a shard of glass from her shoulder with his fingers. The contact sparked like fire, intimate, charged. "Even survivors." Tashana's breath faltered. His touch lingered at her collar, warm and insistent. For a fleeting second, she yearned to yield, to share the burden she'd carried solo for years. Then clarity snapped back. She pulled away, severing the moment. "This was a misstep," she whispered. "No." Kyung-soo's voice was resolute. "This was inevitable." Tashana turned and slipped through the service door before he could pursue, before her resolve crumbled further. But she felt his eyes on her retreat intense, claiming, like a dragon marking its equal. 48 hours after the azure table turned into a slaughterhouse, Kyung-soo paced his fortified penthouse, the city lights sprawling below like a web of glowing veins. The press had devoured the tale. Mafia-linked mogul survives brazen hotel assault. 5 assailants neutralized in heroic standoff. His fixers had spun it flawlessly, but Kyung-soo's mind wasn't on headlines. It was on her Tashana Reed. The name rang false, a veil over something sharper. He dug into it within hours of her vanishing. No roots before a few years back, no traces, just a phantom in waitress garb weaving through his empire. "Minjun," he said softly. His security chief emerged from the dim. "Sir, the waitress from the ambush. You tracked her?" "Yes and no." Minjun placed a tablet down. "She vanished post-shift. No trace. But our eyes in the streets spotted her in Little Jamaica. A spot called the Spice Den bartending now." Kyung-soo's mouth quirked, still cloaked in plain sight, pouring drinks, as if she could erase the symphony of violence they'd shared. "And more?" "Los Reyes." The 5 were their elite ex-military, inked with the cartel's serpent crown. He swiped to an image, a tattoo of a fanged skull entwined in vines. Kyungsu's fists clenched. Paulo Reyes, his vendetta runs deep, inherited from his old man. Whispers say he's not after turf anymore, just your head, broken and bloody. Then he'll join the queue. Kyungsu fastened his jacket. I'm heading out. Sir, not solo. Minjun knew arguing was futile. Kyungsu Lee hadn't forged his syndicate by cowering behind walls, he'd thrived by being the deadliest shadow in the room. The drive to Little Jamaica cut through rain-slicked streets, past markets fragrant with jerk spices and shops pulsing with reggae beats. This was his underbelly. Not the glossy towers, but the raw pulse where power spoke in accents the elite ignored. The spice den hunkered on a corner, its sign flickering like a heartbeat. Inside, the air hung heavy with rum and quiet endurance. Patrons nursed drinks, drowning sorrows born of migration and grit. And behind the bar, with that same unyielding poise, was Tashana. She looked up as he entered, their gazes colliding across the haze. And Kyungsu felt it surge again, that magnetic pull of 2 warriors assessing, debating clash or convergence. She didn't flinch under his stare, but Tashana's grip on the bar rag tightened, her knuckles paling like driftwood bleached by Jamaican sun. The spice den's dim glow cast long shadows across her face, highlighting the sharp lines of her cheekbones and the quiet storm in her eyes. Kyungsu slid onto a stool, the worn leather creaking under his weight, and the air between them thickened with unspoken questions. The other patrons, locals nursing rum punches and regrets, faded into the background, oblivious to the predators in their midst. Whiskey, he said, his voice low, carrying the clipped precision of Seoul's underground dealings. The kind you save for nights when the past catches up. Tashana's lips curved in a half-smile, wry and guarded, as she poured from a dusty bottle behind the bar. No flourish, just efficient motions that echoed the lethal grace he'd witnessed in the restaurant. She slid the glass across the scarred wood, her fingers brushing his for a split-second electric, deliberate. We don't do saved here, just whatever drowns the noise. He took a sip, the burn steadying him, and leaned in. You found a new shadow to hide in quick, but you're still pouring drinks, still playing invisible. Why not run farther? Running's tiring, she replied, resuming her wipe down of the counter, her movements rhythmic like the ocean waves she'd grown up fleeing. And sometimes, the shadows feel like home. Kyungsu Lee had built his empire from shadows like these dark corners where power whispered and fear ruled. Born in the gritty underbelly of Seoul, he'd clawed his way up through blood and betrayal, turning street brawls into a syndicate that spanned continents. His name evoked silence in boardrooms and terror in back alleys. He manipulated wealth like a gambler stacking decks, power like a surgeon wielding a scalpel, and fear like an artist painting nightmares. Hotels like the Azure Table were his fronts, glittering veils over smuggling rings, money laundering ops, and enforcer networks that kept rivals in check. He'd risen by spilling the blood of enemies, leaving trails of broken bodies from Korean ports to American streets. Ruthless, almost invisible, he was a ghost in the criminal world, pulling strings from afar, but the ambush had cracked that illusion. 5 armed men, storming his sanctuary, had exposed a chink in his armor. For the first time in years, Kyungsu felt the sting of vulnerability, not just the physical ache from bruises, but the deeper realization that his empire, for all its iron grip, could crumble if the right shadows turned against him. He set the glass down, eyes never leaving hers. You fought like someone who's danced with death before. Not a waitress's reflexes. Who are you, really? Tashana Reed had spent years burying that question under layers of normalcy, crafting a life as unremarkable as the steam rising from street food carts in Kingston. Originally from Jamaica's rugged hills, where survival meant outrunning poverty and violence, she'd been forged in fire far from tropical shores, recruited young into shadowy mercenary work black ops gigs for governments that denied their existence. She'd been trained in combat's brutal ballet, espionage's silent arts, and survival's unforgiving code. Her hands, now steady with drink trays, had once dismantled bombs, scaled enemy walls, and ended lives in forgotten wars across Africa and the Middle East. Each mission had chipped away at her soul, leaving scars hidden beneath her poised exterior. She'd fled that world after one job too many, one betrayal that left her team in graves and her trust shattered. Waitressing was her escape, a quiet mask of smiles and service, blending into the rhythm of hotel shifts to outrun the ghosts. But the Azure Table attack had yanked her back, her instincts exploding like a suppressed storm. Now, here in this dive bar, the past clawed at her, demanding she confront it. She met his gaze, the weight of his scrutiny pulling at her like undertow. Someone who doesn't owe you answers. Kyung-soo leaned closer, the scent of his cologne sandalwood laced with the faint metallic tang of recent violence mingling with the bar's haze of spilled liquor. You owe me nothing. But I see through the facade. Those moves in the restaurant too calculated, too sharp, like a mercenary sizing up a kill zone. Why here? In my hotel? My world? What do you want? The question hung heavy, laced with suspicion and something hotter, more magnetic. Tashana's pulse quickened, memories flashing. The humid Jamaican nights of her youth, training drills under merciless instructors, the cold rush of adrenaline in foreign kill houses. She'd chosen this city, this job, to vanish, not to entangle with a man like him. But the ambush had bound them, her hidden skills laid bare in a frenzy of bullets and blood. I want peace, she said finally, voice steady but edged with the lilt of her island roots. The kind you can't buy or bully. I was just serving tables, blending in. But those 5, they dragged me out. They dragged us both, Kyung-soo countered, his tone softening just a fraction, revealing a flicker of the man beneath the Mafia veneer. Los Reyes cartel Paulo's crew. They're not done. Minjun, my security head, confirmed it. Those tattoos, the precision. It's personal now, for me, and for you, after what they saw. Tashana's eyes narrowed, the bar's neon reflecting like warning lights in her gaze. I don't need your war. Maybe not. He stood slowly, buttoning his jacket with deliberate calm, but his presence filled the space, commanding and intense. But it's found you, and in my world, shadows shift fast. Stay hidden if you want, but know this. I owe you for that fight, and I pay my debts. She watched him turn toward the door, the rain-slicked streets beyond calling like a siren's song. The confrontation left her unsettled, the facade cracking further. Why was she here, in his orbit? Survival, perhaps, or fate's cruel twist. As Kyung-soo vanished into the night, Tashana felt the pull of her past tightening, knowing the shadows were only beginning to deepen. The door to the spice den swung shut behind Kyung-soo, swallowing him into the rainy veil of Little Jamaica's streets, but his words lingered like smoke in Tashana's lungs. She stood frozen behind the bar, the rag forgotten in her hand, as the neon hum and distant reggae beats filled the void. The pull of her past tightened around her chest, a noose woven from old missions and buried regrets. He'd seen too much, asked too much, and now the shadows she'd clung to felt like traps. Wiping her hands on her apron, she glanced at the clock. Closing time. But peace? That was a luxury long gone. Kyung-soo didn't return that night, but his presence haunted her like a ghost from Seoul's fog-shrouded alleys. He'd narrowly escaped death in the Azure Table ambush, bullets grazing the empire he'd built on ruthlessness and cunning. The attack had shaken him, not just in body but in spirit, reminding him that even dragons could bleed. Intrigued by the enigmatic waitress who'd matched his ferocity, he dug deeper. His network of informants, woven through the city's underbelly, fed him fragments, whispers of a Jamaican woman with no deep roots, sightings of her in transient jobs, a trail that vanished like mist over Kingston's hills. Her deadly calm, those sharp instincts, they drew him like a moth to a concealed flame. She wasn't prey. She was a mirror, reflecting the survivor he'd forged in blood-soaked Korean streets. He needed to know more, not just for curiosity, but for the war brewing. Los Reyes wouldn't stop at one failed hit. Tashana locked up the bar under the drizzle, her boots splashing through puddles that reflected the city's fractured lights. Reluctance gnawed at her as she slipped into the night, senses on high alert the way she'd been trained in those forsaken ops, where every shadow could hide a sniper's scope. She'd come to this city to bury her mercenary life, to let the rhythm of ordinary days drown the echoes of gunfire and betrayal. But Kyung-soo's warning echoed. The cartel had eyes on her now. Paulo Reyes, the vengeful heir to the Los Reyes empire, wasn't one to forgive slights. His father's death at the hands of rivals rumored to involve Kyung-soo's syndicate had fueled a blood feud that spanned borders. The ambush was just the opening salvo, a test of weaknesses. Stakes were higher than she'd imagined. Running meant painting a target on her back, waiting for death to catch up in some anonymous alley. She didn't make it far. Half a block from the bar, a black SUV idled at the curb, its engine a low growl cutting through the rain. The passenger door opened, and there he was, Kyung-soo, silhouetted against the interior light, his suit damp but impeccable, no bodyguards in sight. He was alone, a deliberate show of trust or arrogance. "Get in," he said, voice carrying over the patter of drops. "We need to talk." Tashana hesitated, rain slicking her hair, her instincts screaming trap. But curiosity and the prickling sense of inevitability won. She slid into the leather seat, the door thudding shut like a cage locking. The SUV pulled away smoothly, weaving through the neon-lit maze toward the city's glittering core. "You're persistent," she said, arms crossed, her Jamaican lilt edged with steel. "What do you want now? More questions?" "Answers," Kyung-soo replied, his gaze fixed on the road, hands steady on the wheel. The scent of sandalwood and rain filled the cabin, mingling with the tension. "I've learned a little. Enough to know you're no stranger to violence. Mercenary work, black ops shadows. You fight like someone who's ended wars, not served drinks. But why my hotel? Coincidence? Or something more?" She stared out the window, the city blurring into streaks of light. "Coincidence. I was hiding, not hunting. But you're a magnet for trouble. That cartel, Los Reyes, they're not done. Paulo Reyes wants you broken, and now I'm collateral." He nodded, jaw tight. "Paulo's vendetta is old poison. His father crossed me years ago. I made sure he paid. Now the sun's escalating warehouse hits, whispers of bigger strikes. The ambush was the spark. They'll come for me again, and you. They saw what you can do. You're a threat or a prize." Tashana's reluctance churned, a storm of doubt and survival instinct. Joining him meant diving back into the fire she'd escaped the bloodshed, the betrayals. But running? That was a slow death, hunted like prey. The stakes loomed. Paulo's cartel was relentless, their reach as vast as her hidden scars. Kyung-soo pulled the SUV into a shadowed garage beneath a towering hotel, another of his fortresses. He turned to her, eyes dark and probing. "I have a proposition. Work with me. Fight the cartel. Survive this war. My resources, your skills, we'd be unstoppable. Or run, disappear into the shadows and wait for their blade to find you." The choice hung heavy, electric. Tashana's hesitation was brief, a flicker of her old life flashing before her. The thrill of the hunt, the cost of isolation. She met his gaze, resolve hardening. "Fine, I'll join you. But on my terms, no chains, no blind loyalty. We fight as equals, or not at all." Kyung-soo's lips curved in a rare, approving smile, the dragon recognizing its match. "Agreed. Welcome to the shadows, Tashana. Let's burn them down." As the garage lights flickered, their uneasy alliance took root, forged in rain and reckoning. But in the depths of her gut, Tashana knew this was only the beginning. The cartel's storm was gathering, and trust, once broken, could be the deadliest weapon of all. The elevator hummed upward from the garage, a sleek capsule of steel and mirrored glass that carried Tashana deeper into Kyung-soo's shadowed empire. She stood beside him, arms crossed, the weight of their new alliance settling like a loaded gun in her holster. No turning back now, the Jamaican survivor and the Korean dragon, bound by necessity in a world where trust was a luxury neither could afford. As the doors slid open to a penthouse lair overlooking the city's glittering sprawl, Tashana stepped into the heart of his operation. A fortress of dark wood, surveillance screens flickering like watchful eyes, and enforcers who nodded deferentially to their boss. Kyung-soo led her through the space with the quiet authority of a man who'd built it from blood and ambition. "This is where the real work happens," he said, voice low and steady. "Not the hotels or the fronts, the strings I pull." He introduced her to the inner circle, a handful of loyalists, hardened by years in the syndicate. There was Ji-hoon, the wiry tech expert hacking digital trails, Soo-min, the sharp-eyed accountant laundering fortunes, and Min-jun, the security chief, a broad-shouldered Korean with a scar tracing his jaw like a warning. Min-jun eyed Tashana with a polite nod, his gaze lingering a beat too long, assessing, not welcoming. "New blood?" he asked Kyung-soo, his tone neutral but laced with something Tashana couldn't quite place. "Partner," Kyung-soo corrected, his eyes meeting hers in a silent affirmation of their terms. "She's proven herself. Tashana's skills will tip the scales against Los Reyes." Tashana nodded back, slipping into the role with the ease of her mercenary days, observing, adapting, never fully lowering her guard. Over the next few days, she became part of the circle, her days blurring into strategy sessions and nights patrolling Kyung-soo's assets. She analyzed security footage from the Azure Table ambush, her sharp instincts spotting patterns in the attacker's movements that others missed. Kyung-soo watched her with growing intrigue, drawn to her deadly calm amid the chaos, the way she mapped threats like a chess master from Jamaica's rugged hills. Their partnership deepened in subtle ways, a shared glance during briefings, a nod of mutual respect after sparring sessions where her fluid strikes matched his brutal precision. But she wasn't the only one keeping secrets in this web of shadows. It started with whispers, discrepancies Ji-hoon flagged in the comms logs. Odd leaks, he muttered during a late-night huddle. Screens glowing blue in the penthouse. Warehouse coordinates slipping out, just before Los Reyes hit our supply lines last week. Kyung-soo's jaw tightened, his empire's foundations cracking under invisible strain. Tashana, poring over the data with her espionage-honed eye, felt the unease coil in her gut. She'd survived betrayals before team members selling out in dusty outposts, leaving her to fight alone. Now, embedded in Kyung-soo's world, she questioned every face, every motive. The revelation struck like a blade in the dark. Kyung-soo summoned Min-jun to the penthouse under the guise of a routine debrief, but tension crackled in the air like static before a storm. Tashana stood by, her posture coiled, as Kyung-soo laid out the evidence. Encrypted messages traced back to Min-jun's burner phone, feeding intel to Paulo Reyes's cartel. Coordinates, schedules, vulnerabilities all sold for a price that threatened to unravel everything Kyung-soo had forged. "You've been my right hand for years," Kyung-soo said, voice cold as Seoul's winter winds, circling Min-jun like a predator. "Why?" Min-jun's facade cracked, his scar twisting with a sneer. "You think you're untouchable, Kyung-soo." Paulo offered more power, not scraps from your table. "Your empire's crumbling anyway. I just sped it up." The admission hung heavy, a poison seeping into the room. Tashana's hand instinctively twitched toward the knife she kept hidden, her mercenary instincts screaming trap. Caught in the middle, she felt the internal conflict, rage questioning not just Min-jun's loyalty, but everyone's. Was Ji-hoon clean? Soo-min? Even Kyung-soo, with his dragon's gaze, could hide depths. Trust, in her world, was a fragile thread, easily severed. The confrontation escalated in a blur of motion. Min-jun lunged for a concealed pistol, but Tashana was faster, her boot sweeping his legs in a move born from Black Ops brawls, sending him crashing into a table that splintered under his weight. Kyung-soo pinned him with ruthless efficiency, wrenching the gun away. "You unravel me," Kyung-soo growled, pressing the barrel to Min-jun's temple. "I'll bury you first." But mercy or strategy stayed his hand. They bound Min-jun, extracting confessions under duress, leaks that had enabled the Azure table hit, plans for a bigger assault on Kyung-soo's penthouse. The betrayal's scope threatened it all, his syndicates, his fronts, the fragile alliance with Tashana. As tension boiled over, Kyung-soo and Tashana retreated to the balcony, the city lights sprawling below like a battlefield of stars. Rain had cleared, leaving the air crisp and charged. "He was like a brother," Kyung-soo admitted, vulnerability flickering in his eyes for the first time. "Now, everything's exposed. Los Reyes will strike harder, using his intel." Tashana leaned on the railing, the wind carrying echoes of Jamaican seas. "Betrayal's a poison I've tasted before. Questions everyone, me included?" She met his gaze, the pull between them sharpening amid the chaos. "You?" "No," he said, stepping closer, his presence a warm anchor. "You've earned your place, but we deal with this now. Root out the rot inside, fortify for the war outside." They moved swiftly, purging Min-jun's access, interrogating the circle for accomplices. Tashana's skills shone, setting traps in the digital web, scouting physical weak points with her survival expertise. Kyung-soo rallied his loyalists, his ruthlessness a blade honed sharper by the sting. Together, they prepared stockpiling arms, mapping cartel strongholds, turning the penthouse into a war room. The inevitable clash with Los Reyes loomed, Paulo's vengeance a gathering storm. But in the web of betrayal, their bond strengthened, two survivors weaving new threads of trust amid the unraveling. As dawn broke, Tashana felt the weight of it all, the internal fractures mended, but the external war roaring closer. Questioning loyalties had forged her caution, but with Kyung-soo, she glimpsed something rarer. Alliance not born of fear, but fire. The penthouse war room pulsed with urgency in the days following Min-jun's unmasking, screens flickering like fireflies in the dim light. Kyung-soo paced, his silhouette sharp against the cityscape, while Tashana reviewed maps of his assets, warehouses, safe houses, smuggling routes etched like veins across the urban sprawl. The air hummed with the scent of strong coffee and tension, a fragile calm before the storm. They'd rooted out the internal rot, but Paulo Reyes' cartel loomed like a gathering hurricane, its eye fixed on vengeance. Min-jun's leaks had given them an edge, and now Los Reyes would exploit it with ruthless precision. The retaliation struck without mercy, a series of deadly blows that shattered the night. It began with whispers from scouts, cartel vans converging on the docks, shadows moving under sodium lights. Kyung-soo mobilized his crew, but the first hit landed hard, a vicious raid on his primary warehouse in the industrial district, a fortress of crates hiding illicit cargo from Seoul's black markets. Tashana and Kyung-soo arrived too late, tires screeching on rain-slicked concrete, the air thick with gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. Paulo's men, masked and armed with automatic rifles, had stormed the place like wolves on a wounded herd. Bullets had torn through the guards. 3 key members of Kyung-soo's crew lay sprawled in pools of crimson loyal enforcers who'd bled for the syndicate, now silenced forever. 1. A young Korean named Tae-woo clutched a radio in his lifeless hand. His final transmission, a garbled warning, cut short. "Paulo's sending a message," Kyung-soo growled, kneeling amid the wreckage, his hands stained as he closed Tae-woo's eyes. The ruthless heir to Los Reyes had unleashed everything. Ex-military operatives, incendiary devices that gutted the structure, flames licking at stacked crates like hungry spirits. This wasn't theft. It was annihilation, a declaration of total war. Tashana scanned the chaos, her mercenary instincts kicking in, spotting cartel tags sprayed on the walls, serpents coiled around crowned skulls. Paulo's signature taunt. "They're not stopping here," she said, voice steady but edged with her island's resilient fire. "This is escalation. More will come." She was right. The war surged like a tidal wave, Los Reyes launching assaults on multiple fronts. A drive-by on one of Kyung-soo's downtown fronts left 2 more wounded, bullets shattering glass and scattering patrons into the night. Then, a cyber strike crippled their comms, Ji-hoon's screens glitching with malware traced to cartel hackers. Kyung-soo and Tashana were forced into the fray, their unique skills meshing like interlocking gears. In a midnight ambush on a convoy, Kyung-soo's brutal efficiency shone his strikes precise, born from years of Korean street wars, disarming foes with bone-cracking holds. Tashana complemented him seamlessly, her fluid, espionage-trained movements, a dance of shadows, slipping through flanks, using improvised weapons like a discarded pipe to fell an attacker, her Jamaican grit turning defense into offense. They fended off the waves, their partnership a symphony of survival, his raw power, her calculated stealth, trusting each other's instincts in the heat of battle without a word. Amid the violence, something strange took root, a bond defying their stark differences. Kyung-soo, the dragon hardened by betrayal and loss, began to let his guard down, glimpses of vulnerability surfacing in quiet moments. After one skirmish, as they caught their breath in a safe house, he handed her a cloth to wipe the blood from her hands, his touch lingering a silent admission of reliance. "You see the angles I miss?" he murmured, eyes meeting hers in the dim light. Tashana felt the weight of her past slowly lifting, the ghosts of Black Ops betrayals fading under the warmth of this unlikely trust. Her life, once a solitary run from Jamaican shores to forgotten battlefields, now held a flicker of connection. In combat, their movements grew fluid, almost intuitive. She'd cover his blind side. He'd anticipate her feints as if they'd trained together for years, not days. Yet, their growing connection only complicated the storm. Tashana's past hovered like a specter, flashes of old missions, faces of fallen comrades, reminding her that bonds could shatter. During a lull, as they patched wounds in the penthouse, she caught Kyung-soo staring at a faded photo on his desk, a younger him with a family lost to syndicate wars, his Korean roots steeped in blood feuds. "We come from different hells," she said softly, bandaging a gash on his arm, her fingers brushing his skin with unintended tenderness. "Mine's full of ghosts that don't stay buried. And mine's built on graves I dug myself," he replied, his voice rough, pulling her closer in the charged silence. The air crackled with unspoken heat, their differences, his calculated empire, her nomadic survival melting into something raw and magnetic. But complications loomed. Paulo's cartel pressed harder, whispers of deeper infiltration surfacing, and their pasts threatened to erupt. Trusting him meant risking the heart she'd armored, while Kyung-soo, letting her in, exposed weaknesses Paulo could exploit. Each shared glance, each synchronized strike, deepened the bond. But the war's escalation promised to test it, perhaps to breaking. As another alert blared, Los Reyes targeting a key ally, Tashana grabbed her gear, Kyung-soo at her side. Their alliance, forged in fire, burned brighter, but the shadows of their histories whispered warnings. In this world, connection could be the deadliest vulnerability of all. The alert's shrill beep cut through the penthouse like a knife through silk, yanking Kyung-soo and Tashana from their momentary respite. Screens lit up with red markers, Los Reyes mobilizing for a hit on a key ally's safe house in the warehouse district. Kyung-soo's eyes hardened, the dragon stirring. "No more defense," he said, voice a low rumble echoing his soul roots. "We strike back. Tonight." Tashana nodded, her Jamaican resilience flaring like a storm on the horizon. Their bond, forged in blood and trust, propelled them forward, no words needed, just the shared fire of survivors turning the tide. They moved like shadows in the night, assembling a strike team from the remnants of Kyung-soo's loyalists. Ji-hoon for tech overrides, a handful of enforcers hardened by street wars. The target was Paulo Reyes's nerve center, a fortified compound on the city's outskirts, disguised as a logistics hub but pulsing with cartel operations. Smuggling dens, armories, lieutenants barking orders in a mix of Spanish and street slang. Kyung-soo and Tashana led the assault, slipping through perimeter fences under cover of rain-slicked darkness, the air heavy with the scent of wet asphalt and distant ocean salt. Swift and merciless, they struck. Tashana's stealthy infiltration disabling alarms with Black Ops precision, her knife flashing to silence guards before alarms could wail. Kyung-soo followed with brutal force, his strikes cracking bones and toppling sentries, channeling the ruthless efficiency that had built his empire from Korean back alleys. Key targets fell in rapid succession, a cartel financier gunned down in his office, his ledgers torched. A weapons cache detonated in a bloom of fire that lit the night sky like a vengeful dawn. They moved fluidly, Tashana covering flanks with improvised traps, Kyung-soo pressing forward like an unstoppable force. Fear rippled through Los Reyes ranks. Whispers of the dragon and the ghost spread, Paulo's men scattering as explosions rocked the compound. Paulo himself, holed up in a command room, would feel the sting his operations crippled, his confidence shattered. But victory came at a cost. One of Kyung-soo's men took a bullet in the chaos, his body slumped against a crate, a stark reminder that every gain edged them closer to ruin. The stakes soared. Los Reyes' retaliation would be fiercer, their vendetta personal, drawing Kyung-soo and Tashana deeper into a vortex where destruction loomed with each breath. As the battlefield blurred, so did the lines between enemies and allies. Lies and betrayal wove through the violence like hidden tripwires. During the raid, a supposed loyalist, a newcomer Kyung-soo had vetted post-Minjun, hesitated at a critical moment, his gun trained not on cartel thugs but wavering toward Tashana's back. She spun, instincts screaming, disarming him with a swift kick that echoed her mercenary drills in forgotten jungles. "Traitor," she hissed, binding him as gunfire echoed around them. The man spat defiance, revealing Paulo's bribes had infiltrated deeper, turning allies into snakes. The revelation hit Kyung-soo like a gut punch. In the midst of reloading amid acrid smoke, he confronted the harsh truth: not everyone was on his side. His empire, once ironclad, frayed with doubt. "How many more?" he growled to Tashana, their eyes meeting in the flickering firelight, trust-tested but unbroken. In the heart of the fray, Tashana faced her own demons, the chaos unearthing ghosts she'd buried deep. As they breached Paulo's inner sanctum, a hallway ambush erupted, cartel enforcers swarming like wolves, bullets ricocheting off metal walls. Tashana fought with lethal grace, her body moving on autopilot, a slash here, a chokehold there, bodies dropping like discarded memories. But one assailant, his face twisted in rage, lunged with a knife, his style mirroring the brutal ops she'd escaped close-quarters kills from her Black Ops days. Time fractured, flashes assaulted her, a Jamaican sunset stained with blood, a mission gone wrong where she'd lost her team to a similar betrayal, their screams echoing in her ears. The weight pressed down, her hands trembling for a split second as the past clawed at her focus. "Not now," she muttered, forcing the demons back, driving her elbow into the man's throat with a crack that silenced both him and the voices. Kyung-soo covered her, his presence a steady anchor, but the confrontation left her raw demons not slain, just subdued, complicating their bond with the vulnerability she hated to show. They extracted under fire, the compound a blazing inferno behind them, Paulo's fear a tangible victory. Back in the penthouse, as adrenaline ebbed, Kyung-soo bandaged a graze on Tashana's arm, his touch gentle amid the grit. "Your past haunts you," he said softly, his Korean accent thickening with concern. "Like mine does me." She met his gaze, the strange warmth between them flickering brighter. "It does, but fighting with you, it quiets them, a little." Yet, the blurring lines lingered, enemies within, destruction closing in. Every victory pushed them toward the abyss. Their alliance a fragile light in the escalating storm of lies and violence. The penthouse air hung heavy with the acrid residue of smoke and sweat, the raid's echoes still thrumming in Tashana's veins like a distant drum from Jamaica's hills. She leaned against the balcony railing, the city below a glittering labyrinth of lights and lies, while Kyung-soo paced inside, his silhouette etched sharp against the glow of surveillance screens. The compound's destruction had bought them time, but the cost lingered wounded allies, frayed nerves, and that traitor's confession from the newcomer, hinting at deeper rot. Tashana's arm throbbed under the fresh bandage, a reminder of her demon's brief resurgence. But Kyung-soo's quiet strength had steadied her. Now, as he pored over intercepted comms with Ji-hoon, she sensed the storm building anew. It started with a glitch, an encrypted file Ji-hoon cracked from the captured traitor's device, buried layers deep like a serpent in the sand. "Boss," Ji-hoon said, voice tight, swiveling the screen. "This isn't just a bribe. It's Minjun." Kyung-soo's hand froze mid-motion, the room's tension spiking like a sudden squall. Tashana stepped in from the balcony, her instincts prickling, the scent of rain-mixed city smog clinging to her clothes. They'd bound Minjun days ago, extracting what they thought was the full confession. Leaks for cash, a grudge against Kyung-soo's iron rule. But this? The file unfolded like a venomous bloom, messages dating back years, not months, linking Minjun directly to Paulo Reyes. The shocking truth clawed into the light. Minjun wasn't just a traitor. He'd been Paulo's architect from the shadows, orchestrating Kyung-soo's downfall with surgical precision. Embedded as security chief, he'd fed intel on every move, the Azure table ambush, warehouse vulnerabilities, even personal details like Kyung-soo's hidden safe houses. It was Minjun who'd whispered Paulo's father's location years ago, sparking the vendetta, then played both sides to erode the empire from within. "All along," Kyung-soo whispered, voice cracking like brittle ice, his Korean accent thickening with raw pain. He slammed a fist on the desk, screens rattling. "My brother in arms. For what? Power? Revenge?" The betrayal hit like a tidal wave, crashing through Kyung-soo's armored facade. Tashana watched him unravel, the dragon's fire dimming to embers of hurt. He'd trusted Minjun like family shared meals in Seoul-style backrooms, confided in late-night strategy sessions, even saved his life once in a botched deal gone bloody. Now, that bond twisted into a noose. Kyung-soo sank into a chair, head in hands, the emotional fallout ripping through him. Rage at the deception, grief for the lost loyalty, a hollow ache that echoed his own family's graves from syndicate wars. He must now fight not just the Reyes cartel, Paulo's relentless machine, but the internal void, questioning every alliance, every memory tainted. "He was there from the beginning," Kyung-soo muttered, eyes distant, as if seeing ghosts from Korean streets. "How do I rebuild from this?" Tashana's loyalty teetered on a knife's edge, tested in the storm of his vulnerability. She struggled to keep her emotions in check, the pull toward him warring with her mercenary's caution. Her past screamed warnings trust had cost her everything once. A team betrayed in a dusty outpost, leaving her isolated and scarred. Standing there, watching Kyung-soo's pain, she felt the strange bond deepen, a warmth that scared her. Part of her wanted to bolt, vanish into the night like she'd done before, but another part, the one lifting under his gaze, urged her to stay. "We end this," she said, voice steady despite the turmoil, her Jamaican lilt a grounding rhythm. "Paulo's the head. Cut it off." Kyung-soo looked up, his dark eyes locking onto hers, gratitude flickering amid the storm. He rose, resolve hardening like forged steel, and they dove into planning the final strike. The Reyes family stronghold, a fortified estate on the city's fringes, ringed by guards and tech defenses, would be their target. Ji-hoon mapped entry points. Tashana suggested infiltration routes drawn from Black Ops raids, her mind racing to suppress the emotional churn. Every detail tested her, suggesting a feint to draw Paulo out. She flashed back to a similar ploy that had ended in ambush, her heart pounding. Kyung-soo's hand brushed hers as they leaned over the maps, electric and anchoring, complicating her resolve. "You don't have to do this," he said quietly, sensing her hesitation. "Not for me, but she did for the Alliance, for the ghosts they both carried, for the fragile trust blooming amid the wreckage." "I choose to," she replied, emotions barely contained, the weight of her loyalty a double-edged blade. As the plan solidified, a dawn assault with diversions, explosives, and a direct hit on Paulo, they armed up, the penthouse transforming into an arsenal. Kyung-soo dealt with Minjun's fate in a private call, his voice cold as he ordered exile or worse, the emotional scar raw but fueling his fire. Dawn approached, the city awakening below, oblivious to the brewing climax. Tashana's loyalty held, tested but unbroken, as they prepared to strike. But in her gut, the struggle lingered. Emotions unchecked could be their undoing, and with Paulo waiting, the final betrayal's shadow loomed largest of all. Dawn broke over the city like a reluctant witness, casting pale light on the Reyes family stronghold, a sprawling estate on the fringes, fortified with razor wire and watchtowers that loomed like sentinels from a forgotten war. Kyungsoo and Tashana led their small strike team through the underbrush, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and impending rain, hearts pounding in sync with the mission's pulse. No turning back now. The plan was set, a desperate gambit to end Paulo's reign. Tashana's hand brushed Kyungsoo's as they crouched at the perimeter, a silent vow amid the tension. "Trust me," she whispered, her Jamaican lilt a steady anchor. He nodded, the dragon's fire in his eyes meeting her storm. They breached with explosive precision, Ji-hoon remotely disabling cameras, enforcers cutting through fences like shadows from Seoul's back alleys. But Los Reyes was ready. Paulo's paranoia had turned the estate into a death trap. Alarms wailed as they pushed deep into enemy territory, gunfire erupting like thunder. The showdown ignited in a frenzy of chaos, bullets ricocheting off stone walls, the metallic tang of blood mixing with cordite. Kyungsoo charged forward, his brutal strikes felling cartel guards with bone-crushing efficiency, each blow fueled by Minjun's betrayal and years of syndicate scars. Tashana flanked him, her movements a fluid dance of black ops, lethality slashing throats with a concealed blade, improvising cover from overturned vehicles, her instincts honed in Jamaican survival and foreign kill zones. Secrets unraveled amid the violence, alliances shattering like glass underfoot. One of Kyungsoo's remaining men, a veteran enforcer, turned mid-fight, his gun swinging toward Kyungsoo with a snarled confession. "Paulo promised more than you ever did." The betrayal stung, a fresh wound in the fray. Tashana reacted first, tackling the traitor and snapping his neck with a merciless twist, her face a mask of grim resolve. Lives were lost in the crossfire. Ji-hoon caught a stray bullet, crumpling with a gasp, his tech gear sparking uselessly. The cost mounted, bodies piling as they pressed deeper into the estate's heart, the line between ally and enemy blurring in the haze of smoke and screams. In the heat of battle, Kyungsoo and Tashana trusted each other like never before, their bond a lifeline amid the storm. Back to back in a courtyard turned kill zone, they moved as one. He anticipated her dodges, shielding her from a sniper's perch with a hurled grenade that bloomed fire into the night. She covered his advance, her shots precise, buying him seconds to breach a door. "Left flank!" she shouted, and he pivoted without question, his faith in her instincts absolute. The connection deepened, electric and raw, his Korean ruthlessness meshing with her island grit, forging a unity that transcended words. For a fleeting moment, amid the fever pitch of violence, Tashana felt invincible, her demons silenced by his presence. They cornered Paulo in the estate's opulent command center, a room of marble and monitors now scarred by bullet holes. The cartel leader stood defiant, flanked by his elite guards, his face twisted in vengeful triumph. "You think this ends me, dragon?" Paulo sneered, his voice a venomous hiss, revealing his true intentions as gunfire paused in tense standoff. "It's not your empire I want, it's you, destroyed. Piece by piece, for my father, for every life you stole. It wasn't business, it was personal annihilation." Paulo's plan to dismantle Kyungsoo not just as a rival, but as a man exposing weaknesses, turning allies, eroding his soul until nothing remained. The violence surged to a fever pitch, an explosive maelstrom of fury. Paulo's guards lunged, and the room became a whirlwind. Kyungsoo grappling one in a chokehold, his muscles straining as he snapped the man's arm. Tashana dodging a knife thrust, countering with a knee to the gut that echoed her mercenary trials. They fought with everything fists, improvised weapons, sheer will. Kyungsoo's roars blending with Tashana's focused breaths. Paulo fired wildly, a bullet grazing Kyungsoo's shoulder, drawing blood that soaked his shirt. But he pressed on, tackling Paulo to the ground in a brutal clinch. Tashana covered him, dispatching the last guard with a shot that rang finality. But the cost was high, a brutal toll etched in every gasp and wound. Kyungsoo pinned Paulo, fist raised for the killing blow, but hesitated as more cartel reinforcements stormed in, lives lost in the ensuing scramble, another ally falling to protect their escape. Tashana dragged Kyungsoo back, her own side burning from a shallow stab, the estate crumbling in flames they themselves had set. They fled into the dawn, Paulo's screams of rage fading behind, their victory Pyrrhic empire saved, but souls scarred, the high price of survival weighing heavy as the city awoke. The estate's flames licked the dawn sky like a funeral pyre, casting an orange glow over the retreating forms of Kyungsoo and Tashana. They stumbled from the wreckage, the air thick with the acrid bite of smoke and the coppery stench of blood, their bodies a map of bruises, cuts, and exhaustion. Paulo Reyes' screams had faded into gurgles as his own reinforcements turned chaotic in the inferno, some fleeing, others cut down in the crossfire. The war with Los Reyes ended not in triumph, but in a bloody, ragged silence. Paulo's body lost to the blaze, his cartel fracturing without its vengeful head. Sirens wailed in the distance, a city's indifferent response to the shadow's collapse. Kyungsoo leaned on Tashana, his shoulder wound seeping through hasty bandages, while she pressed a hand to her stabbed side, each step a testament to survival's brutal toll. They made it to a hidden safe house on the city's edge, a nondescript apartment overlooking rain-swept streets, stocked with medical kits and false identities. There, in the dim light of a single lamp, they picked up the pieces of their shattered lives. Kyungsoo winced as Tashana cleaned his wound, her hands steady despite the pain etching her face. "It's over," he murmured, voice rough from smoke and strain, his Korean accent a low rumble like distant thunder. But it wasn't, not really. The cartel war had claimed too much. Ji-hoon, fallen in the courtyard, enforcers who'd bled out in the halls, even the traitor whose betrayal had deepened the scars. Kyungsoo's empire lay in tatters, warehouses gutted, alliances frayed, his once invisible power exposed and vulnerable. He'd lost brothers in arms, pieces of his soul forged in Seoul's unforgiving streets, now reduced to ghosts haunting his thoughts. Tashana felt the losses echo her own, a hollow ache mirroring the voids from her mercenary past. She'd buried comrades in foreign sands, outrun betrayals that left her isolated on Jamaican shores. But this war had stripped away more her fragile veil of normalcy, the illusion of escape. Both had sacrificed lives, trust, the quiet corners of their hearts they'd guarded fiercely. Yet, amid the ruins, their bond emerged unbreakable, a tether woven from shared fire and understanding. In the safe house's quiet hours, as they bandaged wounds and shared sparse meals, they came to know each other in ways no one else could. Kyungsoo spoke of his family's graves, lost to syndicate feuds, the ruthlessness that had armored him against a world of knives. Tashana revealed her Black Ops scars, the missions that stole her youth, the solitude that followed. Her Jamaican roots a distant rhythm of resilience and regret. Their differences, his calculated empire building, her nomadic survival melted into harmony, each seeing the other's hidden depths, the dragon's hidden vulnerability, the storm's quiet strength. As days blurred into a tentative recovery, Kyungsoo began rebuilding. He reached out to remnants of his network, forging new alliances from the ashes, securing fronts, rerouting smuggling lines, his mind a whirlwind of strategy to reclaim what Paulo had nearly destroyed. The city whispered of the cartel's fall, fear shifting to respect for the survivor who'd toppled it. But reconstruction demanded choices, and Tashana stood at a crossroads. The safe house felt like a cage, her instincts urging her to disappear into the shadows once more, to slip away under a new name, vanish like mist over Kingston's hills, leaving the violence behind. Running was her old armor, a way to outpace the ghosts and the growing pull toward Kyungsoo, whose presence stirred emotions she'd long suppressed. Stay? It meant facing whatever came next, more wars, deeper betrayals, the risk of losing him as she'd lost so much. She paced the apartment one evening, rain pattering against the windows like hesitant applause, while Kyungsoo watched from the shadows, his gaze steady and probing. "The empire needs rebuilding," he said softly, stepping closer, the scent of sandalwood and healing salves clinging to him. "But I need you more. Stay, face it with me." Tashana's heart twisted, emotions churning like a Caribbean gale. The choice hung heavy, disappear and reclaim solitude, or embrace the bond that had saved them both. In his eyes, she saw understanding, a mirror to her soul no one else had touched. "I've run before," she whispered, her voice laced with the lilt of home. "But with you, it's different. We rebuild together." He pulled her close, their embrace a quiet vow, unbreakable amid the wreckage. The story closed with a new understanding. Survival in a world of violence exacted a steep price. Lives lost, trusts shattered, souls scarred. But for Kyungsoo and Tashana, together, they just might rebuild everything they lost, forging a future from the ashes, where power and trust intertwined like roots in fertile soil. And there you have it, the explosive end to Kyung-soo and Tashana's wild ride of survival, trust, and unbreakable bonds. If this story hit home, subscribe for more thrilling tales, give it a big like, and comment below where you're watching from. Our storytelling family spans the globe, and I love hearing from you. Don't forget to share with a friend. And hey, click on that next video popping up on your screen for another epic adventure. See you there, warriors.